In a press conference, your colleague, Congressman Andy Biggs, said that he hopes that the ACLU takes this lawsuit to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court will make the ultimate rule. Is that something you would want to see?
Well, I think that's just part of the way the process works itself out. The Supreme Court, I already said, they made a lot of erroneous rulings, and I've had people. I'm very pro-life. I had people back during before Roe v. Wade was overturned say, Randy, but they said, but Randy, you don't understand. The Supreme Court said abortion was legal, and I said, look, you're trying to use that as an argument that just doesn't hold any water for me. It's just all that means is the Supreme Court got it wrong again. And I hearken back to those other cases, Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus Ferguson. You can go right down the list. And so I think what you're going to see is this will be played out in the Supreme Court.
When you're looking at the number of children born to non-citizens each year in the country, do you have an idea of how many that is? Would this legislation be managing what you're considering a large existing crisis, or would this be more about deterrence in the future?
Well, I think it has to be a little bit of both, Brittany, because I've said this about the Dreamers for a long time. When you've got Dreamers that have been here 20, some of them came across their parents. They were mere babies 20 years ago. You're not going to displace 20 and 30-year-olds with their own family. But I think what you're seeing is Trump has laid a marker down. Hopefully the Republican Party is laying a marker down that says enough is enough. We're going to deport all those who have come in recently. Under Joe Biden, 10 million. Oh, Joe Biden, although I call him Joe O. Biden, I call him President O. Biden because I think he was Obama's third term. But you saw 10 million people come in, and there's no way that should have happened, been allowed to happen. There's no way we can sustain that, and we've got to turn that around.
To your point, we did see record high numbers of illegal immigration in the Biden presidency. Donald Trump ran on saying, hey, I'm going to be tougher on the border. I'm going to be tougher on immigration. He seems to be making good on that promise this week, signing these executive orders. So what's next in this term of Congress when it comes to immigration as a whole?
Well, you're seeing, I'm sure you're hearing about, of course, ICE, you want to call them raids or whatever, is up in New York now. You're seeing some of the video of it. I didn't see this person or hear this person, that Chicago city council people were saying they would fight the federal government. They would use Chicago police if the federal government tried to come into Chicago and arrest some of these illegals. And because they don't have any rights, they said for the federal government doesn't come into Chicago. I'm like, are you kidding me? Someone breaks a federal law and they come into your city, and you think just because you're Chicago, the federal government doesn't have a purview? And the example I use, Brittany, is this. If you've got somebody who breaks the income tax code, tax evasion, right, and they find out that he's a tax evader, or she, I don't want to be sexist, they find out he's a tax evader, then they're going to arrest him and charge him with tax evasion. It's a federal law. You think just because he lives in Chicago, the federal government can't come in and arrest him? Of course they can. I mean, they're these bleeding heart liberals on all this illegal stuff. They ignore the crime, they ignore the abuse where they assault people, the illegals, they ignore the rape, and they ignore the murder of some Americans. They'll witness the Lake and Riley bill. And so I think you're going to see this played out where the federal government's going to do its job. You're seeing it in New York. It's going to expand to other cities, irrespective of whether Chicago likes it or not.
Some of these cities that you're describing are sanctuary cities. Do you think that's going to go away in the Trump term?
Well, you're talking about a term, a label, if you will, that some cities have chosen to label themselves with. I don't know really how they would deal with it. And quite frankly, I don't care. What I care about is deporting the illegals, many of them who are criminals. Now, you probably know this too. Also, we have illegal aliens of interest from other countries. I'm talking about countries that hate us: Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, all these. You've got folks over here that hate hate our ideals. And there was, I forget the last count, last year, I think there was 55,000 special interest aliens held, with it, handled at the border. I think that's right, 55,000. So, Brittany, if if we missed 10% of those illegal aliens who mean to do us harm, that's 5,500 in this country. If we missed 1% of the 55,000, that's 550 criminals, aliens from other companies. You just saw what happened, right? In New Orleans, you just saw what happened there. And so if we've got 550 illegals that hate America and intend to do, or terrorists tend to do us harm, think with me back. You probably weren't even even in elementary school in 9/11. There was 19 terrorists who brought down the trade centers, killing almost 3,000 people. 19. If we have now 550 those same kind of terrorists in this country, or 5,000, it's only a matter of time, Brittany. It's extremely important that we secure our border.
I actually am, older than I look. I was in school during 9/11. I remember that. But when you're talking about the New Orleans, that New Orleans attack, that was an American citizen. So why do you think that's getting lumped into this conversation?
Because it was radicalization by an Islamic group that teaches people, whether they're from America, Canada, Mexico, choose any country. America is you'll, if you think about it, I think you'll remember this. They've labeled America as the great Satan. And so I don't care what country they're from or where they were born. If they're radicalized by that radicalization of those Islamic terrorists, we are in for one tough ride. We better make sure our country is secure.